welcome to Museum Nights. This is exciting. This is a virtual Museum Nights. It's our second one, but tonight is all live on YouTube Live, and we're so thrilled that you're joining us. We've really been missing being in the museum, the whole staff. Everyone's working at home, like many of you are. We're glad to be working. We're glad to be doing good projects, looking to the future, but we do miss welcoming you to the museum, to experience programs, to experience exhibitions, just to greet you and see your smiling faces and to connect with you around art. So we're missing that. Let me just turn down my volume, thank you. But we're really thrilled to be connecting with you tonight. And tonight's gonna be a lot of fun. As I say, it's all live. It's something we've been working hard on, staff throughout the museum. I wanna do a shout out to Mimi, and who you'll meet later, to Paige, Elizabeth, Heather, Tammy, and many other people have really been behind the scenes, bringing together a great cast of artists and mathematicians and book lovers, all to share their interest in art and creativity with you. So you found your way to YouTube Live tonight through our Facebook page, which is fabulous. If you haven't been exploring the Harn's webpage, I invite you to go check out harn.ufl.edu, harn.ufl.edu. We have a lot going on there. You may have seen the slides we were showing a little earlier. There's art at home where there's lots of activities. Some of them are great for young ones. All of them are great for adults. I've had a lot of fun doing them with myself and with my family. There's art at home, there's watch and listen, there's great talks with curators. We'll be adding in the future much more, including talks with artists. Lots to look forward to. Ways to experience the museum, even though we can't be in the museum. So we're making some lemonade with the lemons that we've got right now. In the first hour tonight, in just a moment, I will introduce them. We're going to be joined by Kevin Knutson, a mathematician at UF, and Ellen Knutson, a librarian and book artist. And we'll be looking at an exhibition that's currently installed at the museum. It was on view before we closed, and it'll be on view when we open, I believe, called Art and Math, Seeing Mathematics in the Museum. It's an exhibition co-curated with Dr. Knutson and Dulcie Roman, who's our curator of modern art, who worked together to look at exhibition collection works in the museum in terms of mathematics. So Kevin will have a chance to talk with you about specific works in the exhibition. We have a short walkthrough of that I'll share in a moment. In the second hour, starting about 7 o'clock, Mimi Stocker will take over. She's my colleague in education at the Harn, and she's going to be meeting in the studios and homework studios of 4 artists who are wonderful people, wonderful Gainesvillians connected to UF and have done a lot of work with the museum. They know the museum well. They've been great supporters. Iris Coe-Gross, Brett Taylor, Molly Kempson, and Kristen Lopez. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them because it's been a while since I've had a chance to hear from them about what they're up to. So 6:05, we're just about to ready to go live. I'll bring in Kevin and Ellen. Let me switch my technology. And again, thanks for joining us. As I said, we're on YouTube Live, and you've noticed on the right-hand side, there's a chat box. We're going to be monitoring that chat box. The live stream on YouTube is about 20 seconds behind what's happening here on our desktop. So if you share a question with us, it might take us a little bit. It might seem like there's a weird, awkward pause, but we're going to be getting to those questions. It's just going to be a delay. So thanks for your engagement, and we look forward to a great night with you. Well, let me go find Kevin and Ellen. They're joining us now. Kevin and Ellen, great to see you. Can you hear us?
We can. Can you hear us?
Excellent. Great. Your volume's a little quiet, so if you'll speak up, that'll be great.
Okay.
Kevin, I'm going to make sure you have a chance to share your slideshow when we get to that.
Okay.
I'm so thrilled that you joined us tonight. You've both been great friends of the Harn for a long time. I've known you in different capacities, and you've done a lot of things with the museum. You've shared your creativity and your interest in math. Kevin, most recently, you curated the Art and Math exhibition, which is on view. And in just a moment, I'll share a little walkthrough, about a 1-minute walkthrough. And Ellen, it's been great to work with you most recently in the 53rd Annual School of Art and Art History Faculty Show. where you shared your work as well. How are y'all doing tonight?
Good.
Great.
Great, thanks. Shall we dive right in?
Sure,
Sure.
why not? Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to take me a moment to wind up our walkthrough.
Okay.
Let's see, is this it? And that was not it. And share screen. Everyone knows the awkwardness of Zoom, but here we go.
There it is.
Okay. So a quick walkthrough of art and math, Seeing Mathematics Museum. Just a chance to see the layout before Dr. Knudsen shares closer images and conversation with us about works. Mileage out of the airport lounge music tonight. All right. Great.
That's great. Our son's a percussionist. He's a musician all the way around, and he would definitely be into the vibes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. So Kevin, everyone has had a chance to get that quick introduction to the exhibition. I'm sure some of our visitors here or viewers here tonight have seen it, but should I give your keynote a try?
Sure. Let's give it a shot.
Let's try streaming from your end.
Okay.
That's looking good.
Yeah,
So
I'm trying to get it to play. Hang on. How's that?
Looks great.
Okay, good. So I guess Ellen's going to walk away and get her phone set up for the next business. But I'm not going to talk about every piece that was in that show. That was a really nice overview that you had there, Eric. But I'm going to talk about a few of the pieces that I really rather liked quite a bit. And so up first here is what is this called? Figuras constructivas. This is by Joaquin Torres Garcia. And what I really like about this piece, well, I like lots of things about this piece. One of all, it's very graphic and colorful. And you can see here it's two figures talking. What it reminds me, though, it reminds me of a lot of things, but just sort of personally, it reminds me of being a kid a little bit, because I have no artistic ability whatsoever. My stick figures are super amateurish. I can't draw. But
you always say that, Kevin. I've seen your paper art, so I'll give you.
Well, but that's something else. I mean,
we're going to give you a 9 on the pants on fire line.
you put a pencil in my hand and see what happens. It's bad.
Okay.
But what I like about this is, one thing I could do when I was a kid, I would have crayons, of course, and I would scribble all over a piece of paper with black, and then I would just color in the gaps, with different colors. I think we've all done this, right? And this painting reminds me of that a little bit, just sort of doing that. I mean, clear, what you did when you were a kid, of course, had no structure, but this clearly does. You can see two figures talking to each other. So I just sort of like that, because that's sort of all I could ever draw when I was a kid. But mathematically, what I like here is that it reminds me of something called the four-color theorem, which goes like this. If you have a map, and by a map we mean, well, a map, you draw some lines to create regions on a flat piece of paper, and then you color the regions. So everybody's seen the map of the United States on the wall or whatever. And if you look carefully at any given map, you might ask, well, how many colors do you need? Like, what's the minimal number of colors? What's the minimal number of colors you need to color a thing? And it wasn't too hard to show that you can always get away with using 5 colors. And if you take a look at this painting right here, there are 5 colors. There's sort of that whitish color, sort of creamy color, orange, red, blue, and black. And so 5 colors, not so difficult. But there's a big theorem called the 4-color theorem, which says that you hand me any map, and this painting is an example of a map. If you just sort of look at the lines there, you can color it with 4 colors. And that was finally proved in 1976, and it was very controversial, and still is in some ways, because the proof was done by computer. A couple of mathematicians reduced it to a few cases, and then figured out that, okay, these are all the cases that are possible, and they ran it through a computer, had a computer check every one that you could color it with 4, and then that's it.
Computers, they're going to put mathematicians out of business.
Well, I don't know. You know, UF had that big announcement today that NVIDIA is giving us that huge machine to do all this AI, but computers are only as smart as the people that program them.
Sure.
So I'm not too worried about it. And so what was great about this piece is, I mean, you know, I have this personal connection, also the 4-color theorem. And then the staff at the Harn actually created an activity out of this. Is that correct, Eric? They
That's right. Elizabeth King, working with her interns, created a great activity.
Right.
To
to 4-color this map. Yeah.
Exactly. It was a challenge to let people sort of experience the process and embody that discovery that was proven with the mathematicians
right. So,
and the computers.
Yeah, that I haven't tried it myself. I suspect it's not very easy. I don't think it's an easy thing to do. So this is really a nice piece. I like it a lot. This next one is called Robert Morris 131-1. It's a photograph by Alan Cohen. I'm not really sure what I'm seeing here. If I had to guess, it would be something like the light coming through a fence or something like that. And what I really like here is just how I still do take photographs, and you know, I sort of miss going into the dark room. It's a sort of a wonderful place to be. So I think it's an interesting photograph in the sense I don't really know what's going on. But mathematically, and I know you take photos too, Eric. I mean, so you must be drawn to these kind of things yourself. But mathematically, what I see here is tessellations. So, for example, on the right side of the photograph there, it's, you know, a bunch of hexagons. Then sort of middle left, it's some sort of 4-sided figures maybe. And so this gets at the idea of, well, if you take a shape, can you use it to cover the plane, to tile the plane? Say you made tiles in these shapes. Can you fill out a flat surface with them? And this is a subject of intense study in mathematics. And you figure out pretty quickly, well, okay, triangles always work. You can cover, and it doesn't matter, they don't have to be equilateral. They can just be any triangles. You can make them cover a flat surface. Squares, obviously you can do, but even any 4-sided shape, even if it's not convex, like it might have a dent in it, you can still use it to cover the plane. You can tile a flat surface. Hexagons, these regular hexagons, clearly you know how to do that. You've seen, you know, floors that are tiled with hexagons.
Right.
Anything bigger, if you want the shapes to be regular, right? So in other words, where the side lengths are all the same, you can't go any bigger because, you know, you can do a count where the tiles come together at a point, at a corner point like that. You just do a count of the angles around there, and you quickly discover that if you had more than 6 sides, you'd be in trouble. So for regular objects, you can do hexagons, you can do squares, you can do triangles, you can't do anything bigger. And then you'll notice that I skipped 5. I skipped pentagons. Pentagons are super interesting. So regular pentagons won't work, and that angle argument that I mentioned sort of does the trick. So you might ask, well, what if you allow different shapes and angles and stuff like that, different side lengths and angles? And the answer is yes, there are irregular pentagons that can tile the plane. And in fact, there are exactly 15 of them. Why 15? Nobody knows. I mean, you have to prove there are only 15, and the 15th was only found about 5 years ago, remarkably.
So there's 15 kinds of pentagons that
Yes,
you can tile with.
that's right, 15.
Does
And
that make
someone,
15 a magical number?
I don't know. I mean, someone proved. I mean, I saw a proof somewhere that that 15 was it. And again, it's sort of one of these things where they put it in a computer and checked a bunch of cases.
Hmm.
So, you know, I don't know if that's been vetted yet, but it seems to be that's the answer. Um, so that's why I like this photograph. It just reminds me of all these tilings, and those are interesting questions to me. Whoa, did not mean to do that. Are you still seeing my screen?
No, we lost you. I'm seeing you. We lost your uh, PowerPoint or your presentation.
That's really weird. I don't know where it went. Okay, there it is. Okay, you see it? You got it again?
No, maybe you should
I guess
reshare your
I'm
screen or
gonna
something.
share my screen again. You know, you would think that after all this time of using Zoom, um, that we would have figured this out by now. Where did it go? Hang on. It's here, I promise.
We have confidence.
Yes.
Not up yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to, this is super weird. It's like Keynote has decided that it's being used. Well, I would be embarrassed, but you know,
This is new territory.
this, you know, we've all been doing this so much that
Absolutely.
it's sort of, okay. Zoom meeting.
So in the meantime, I'm going to answer a question from
Okay, great.
Jojo on YouTube Live.
Uh-huh.
Jojo's asking, did you, and I don't think this is a question for you, Kevin, maybe, did you
Yep.
split the canvas into squares before painting? So you didn't paint it, obviously.
No.
Joaquin Torres Garcia did.
Yep.
And I think clearly he found the forms with the heavy dark lines he created, and then he explored the coloring and
Mhm.
probably very deliberately worked that out himself.
Yes.
And it looks like you are back
Okay,
online.
good.
That's a beautiful vase, a little blurry, but we can work with it.
Yeah, well, that's the photo you gave me, Eric.
What was I thinking? I take full responsibility.
Right, so this is a Ming Dynasty vase from the late 16th century. And what I liked about this was, of course, the pattern. You know, what draws us to things like this is symmetry, right? We really like to see these patterns repeat. And you'll notice here there are a lot of lotuses on this figure. And if you look at that central one, you look around it, there are 6 lotuses around it. So that suggests there's a fair amount of symmetry. And so what I'd like to think about here is imagine taking this pattern and sort of flattening it out onto a plane, onto a flat surface, like wallpaper. And then you might ask, okay, so you got this wallpaper pattern. How many essentially different wallpaper patterns are there? Now, I say essentially different. You know, of course, there's infinitely many wallpaper patterns. You can do different colors. You can do different things. Instead of lotuses, you could have, you know, Tyrannosaurus Rex or whatever. But what makes a pattern is that it has certain symmetries. So you can imagine you can translate things up and down or set left to right. You can rotate. You can do reflections. And so you might ask, how many different possible patterns can you have? In this particular example, there's lots of symmetry. So for example, I could imagine a 60-degree rotation around that center lotus. Imagine this is now spread out on the plane. You could rotate it by 60 degrees. You could, if you draw a line through those 3 lotuses in the center, you can flip across that line. And you could translate this thing sort of 1 unit to the right. There's another central lotus. And so the set of all things that you can do forms something called a group. And the question is, how many different things can you have? The answer is, for wallpaper patterns, there are 17.
17, okay.
There are exactly 17 distinct wallpaper patterns. And this one has this very cryptic name called P6M. The 6 means this sort of 60-degree rotation. If you do that 6 times, you're back to where you started. M sort of means there's a reflection. There's a mirror reflection in there, things like that. So this is great fun. I remember taking a class on this as an undergraduate in geometry, it's transformation geometry it's called, and we learned that we learned about these 17 wallpaper groups they're called.
You said you'd never use your geometry in real life. So
Exactly.
there's going to be a quiz later.
Right.
15 kinds of pentagons
Yep.
in a tessellated pattern and
Yep.
17 patterns of wallpaper.
17 wallpaper. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. This next piece is part of the Formulation Articulation Series, Volume 1 by Joseph Albers. A lot of people might know Albers for his work on color, but he was also interested in these sort of studies of lines and perspective. And what's interesting about this is that if you look at the image on the left and on the right, it's the exact same set of lines, right? I mean, they are. I mean, you know, the lines are just there, but he has chosen to make the perspective slightly different with an over and under kind of thing. And so this just sort of messes with you. If you just sort of stare at it for you know, each image individually, the question is what parts are sort of coming out of the page, what parts are going into the page. It's a bit like, you know, those MC Escher, you know, and I just like how it messes with your perspective. And one thing you might ask is, okay, can you get from one of these to the other? Like, can you rotate the one on the left to make it look like the one on the right? Can you do some sort of reflection to make it do that? I haven't thought about the answer to that, but well, I used to think that you might be able to rotate the left one to get the right one, but I'm not so sure anymore. So playing with perspective is lots of fun, and there are a lot of prints in this series, and the Harn has several, I believe.
That's right.
And that was part of the great fun of curating this exhibition with you and Dulcie Ramon, was getting to go downstairs in the Harn and seeing, you know, just of course the huge collection you guys have down there, and it was really a lot of fun. So so this piece is nice from that point of view.
It's great. It was fun sharing it with you. There's more than 11,000 objects hungry for visitors to come back to the museum when we open. I've got a question from Chris, who should be studying for his doctoral exam, which is coming up.
Good for him.
But we're glad he's here with us. He says, and you can tell this is a guy studying for a doctoral exam, what's your favorite finite group?
My favorite finite group?
Yeah.
Well, in a previous life, I used to really study finite groups of matrices. So, you know, groups of n by n matrices over finite rings, if those words make any sense.
I was going to say the same thing.
But
amazing.
But truthfully, I really like the Quaternion group. So it's a group of, it's got 8 elements, and it's a symmetry group of. I'm flaking on which object it's a symmetry group of. Square? Yeah, symmetry group of the square. It's no, that's the dihedral group. The Quaternion group is different. So there's more than one group of order 8 with 8 elements in it, and the Quaternion group is one of them. The dihedral group is another, and these are sorts of fun things. So I'm going to go with the Quaternions of order 8.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Kevin, it's 6:25.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to do maybe one more, and then we can hand it off to Ellen. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So one more piece here, and this is from Euclid's Elements. This is the 1847 edition done by Oliver Byrne, and he came up with this very visual way of thinking about Euclid's Elements, which of course is the most used mathematics textbook ever. This here's a couple of pages from that. The one on the left, it tells you how to circumscribe put a circle around a regular pentagon, and then the one on the right is how you inscribe a hexagon inside of a circle. And so maybe you remember these compass and straight edge constructions from when you were in school, when you took geometry. But this edition is wonderful. This was on loan to the Harn from the Smathers Special Collections Library, and this is a first edition. This is one of the original ones. There have been reissues of this. Byrne only did the first six books of the 13 books of Euclid's Elements. And Taschen published a really inexpensive replica of it. I think it's maybe $40, and I have that. And a small publisher in Spain actually last year completed it. They did the last 7 books. They got some mathematicians to do it in the same style. It's also very cool. So this is something I really recommend checking out. It helps to really see these things visually, and it's really a wonderful illustration of mathematics.
It is beautiful. I'm so glad you introduced it to me, and you shared with me a digital version as well.
That's right.
And I'm just sharing that with our YouTube watchers so they can go and explore it when they want to on their own.
Okay, very cool.
Kevin, thanks so much for taking us through about 4 or 5 works in the exhibition. I really hope people get to check it out themselves in the near future. But let's move on to our next stop on this art, math, and folding things.
Yeah. So you might want to make Ellen a co-host now, because she has her phone set up and she's going to fold something, and then I'm going to fold something when she's done.
Great. Thank you for the prompt there. Ellen, you are a co-host.
You're muted, Ellen.
I just unmuted it. Oops. I can't. She's there. She's
now I'm there?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. All right. Let me make my screen the main so I can see what you see. I think I can see it, but okay. So I'm going to show how to fold a pop-up map from a single sheet of paper. So this is the finished object that I'm going to make. This is what it's going to be. And this is just an 8.5 by 11 hot pink piece of paper.
Hold on one. Okay, good. Yes, it looks good. Sorry. I was just checking the YouTube live stream. Looks beautiful.
Okay.
8.5 by 11 flat piece of paper.
Yeah, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So the way to do this is to start by folding the sheet of paper in half, short edges together. So like this. And this is sometimes called a hamburger fold.
Everyone at home is welcome to follow along.
Yeah, if you have just any sheet of paper will work. And I'm just using an 8.5 by 11 since it's the most typical size. Okay, so I folded that in half and I'm opening it back up. And now I want to turn it over so that there is a mountain fold sticking up where I folded that. So it's pointing up. And then I'm going to make a valley fold across the hot dog fold, which is the long way across the paper. So I'm going to fold it like this. And these folds are going to be something that we refer to later when we're making other folds. So we need to keep them sharp. Okay. All right. So now this is the tricky bit. You want to take that mountain fold that we folded. So we've got these quadrants, and I want to take one of these center folds, the short one, and I'm going to fold the short edge into the long one, but just in this quadrant here. So I'm going to take this, I have to kind of use my finger to hold the center here. And then I'm going to bend the short fold into the long one. Straight down like that. Sort of hard to see, but then I can't, I'm folding behind the piece of paper. That's where I'm going to make my crease. And then I'm going to do that all the way around. So at each quadrant, and I'm kind of using the fold to guide my other one so I can stop myself.
I am following along. How precise should we be?
You want to be precise because when this collapses, you want it to weave together. So if you overlap anything, it probably won't work. So you want to just make sure you don't cross over the fold lines. So like when you're folding, don't go across like that. You want to really stay inside of that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, that first one was the hardest, and it makes sense after that.
Right. Once you do it, that's how it is. Yeah. The first time doing this is the hardest one. Okay. So now it's folded all the way around. And I was realizing you really can fold a diagonal here, but it's a little hard to keep it straight. And that's why I do it with the quadrants instead. It's just easier to explain, but you could do a fold like this all the way across. But anyway, okay, so here's the the first folds. And now we're going to collapse this thing down. We're going to bring those short edges, those very first folds that we made, and we're going to collapse this down like this. So you get this little house shaped piece of paper here. Okay, so it's like kind of like a little paper airplane. All right, so now we're going to talk about these wings that we've created. So there's 4 of them, and we're going to work on the top one first. And I'm using a mat that has has this grid on here, and that's very useful. If I wanted to make a series of these all the same size, this would be a good way to control the finished size of that folded piece. So I'm going to remember how we made that hot dog fold? Well, here's the center line. I hope you guys can see. I held it a little bit here. This center line, it runs down the length of the paper. I'm going to use that to guide me, and I'm going to lay it right on my little grid, but you don't have to do this. This is just if you're going to make a series, you would really want to do this. And I'm going to take one of these wings, and I'm going to fold across that center line. I'm going to overlap the wing maybe about 3/4 of an inch. And I can actually look at that on my mat and know that that's how far my wing's going over. But you can just kind of eyeball it. It really doesn't matter what you do. You can do a 1/2 inch. You just want to be able to cross this center line with that first fold like that. And now the second one across from that, we're going to bring, and here's what we're going to do. Instead of trying to measure that one like we did for this first one where we came across by 3/4 of an inch from the center line, I'm going to look at this center line that's on the page, bring that wing across, and now I want to make like a little diamond shape where that center line comes up into where those 2 wings overlap. So this center line here is where I'm talking about. It comes up into a point in that little diamond shape here. And then I can crease it down. So this is the shape I want here. This it's a square, but the points are what we're looking at. So it's a diamond. Okay, so that's one side folded. Now I'm going to flip it over. And now all I'm going to do is fold these wings and just match the ones underneath. So I can just bring the edges together here and just crease it.
Does it matter which one's on top, left or right?
No, it doesn't, because we're going to invert these folds in just a minute. So now again, I'm just matching the fold underneath. Okay, so now this is the tricky part, believe it or not. This is the hardest thing here, is to invert these wings. So now, when you see the finished one, it looks just like it. This is the finished one. This is the one, we've got to make this look like this. So we've got to take those wings inside. We got to tuck them in. So the way to do that is to just unfold one wing at a time. You're going to open it. And when you do that, you can see, this is the way I describe it. There's a rectangle right here that has a diagonal going through it. So it's this rectangle here, and there's a diagonal here. This is a short little edge that does, the direction of this fold doesn't change. So I suggest holding on to that one, and you're going to invert the other 2. And really, you're just pushing that fold in, because it was out here. When I open it, I see that rectangle in the upper corner. I hold on to the short edge of that rectangle, push the diagonal down, push the long horizontal down. And all I'm doing is inverting that. So there's one done. Here's the other wing. So now I go over to this one, open it, grab the short edge, and invert that fold. Oops. And then do it on the other 2. The first one's the hardest one, then you kind of just get a sense of what you're doing, and it goes a lot easier. So open that rectangle, grab that short edge of the rectangle, and invert the folds, the other 2 folds.
Great instructions, thank you.
And then you've got your pop-up mat all folded up. And so it just goes back in pretty smoothly. It doesn't matter which side overlaps which. It can change if you open it up flat. Now this doesn't open flat completely again because it's been creased all in the same direction. So it's going to continue to close and open like that. And then I wanted to show you guys a book that I made, a whole bunch of these together. So that's like 13 of these maps. That's a page, that's a page. And the way they're done, so I did a little example with some maps, actual maps from the maps library that you can get when it's open. You can get these old maps and you can do whatever you want with them because they just give them away. But this is a map. And I made a bunch of these, and the way, so I made them all the same size. And if I wanted to put these together, if I had a stack that I had all together, I would just put double stick tape on the back. I'll just do it. I would do it neater if I was doing it for myself permanently, but I'm going to do it quick so you can see. Double stick tape. And then just peel that. So this is that good transfer tape that you can, it has a little wax release on it. So it's less messy than that photo tape. It's on a roll, but that would work too if that's what you have. And then you just need to, I'd probably make a little jig so I could stop them. But then you just line them up, stick it together. And now there's two together. And this is where they're attached here. So if you wanted to make a book with content, I would suggest making like a little mock-up and then figure out where things would go, print that out of your laser printer or draw on it or whatever you wanted to do. Because I think once this thing is put together, it's sort of hard to use it like a sketchbook. It's not going to open up flat again. But you could, make a mock-up and figure out what you wanted to design. So I could make, a huge stack of these things. And then they're kind of cool because you can make like a little carousel shape with them, like that. These are that's just a case, like a bookcase. But yeah, you can do something like that with it. Okay, so that's the pop-up map.
Wow, Ellen, that's totally beautiful. And your instructions were great. I have a really embarrassed result, but what I love is that we started with just an 8.5 and 11
Yeah.
piece of paper, and you turned it into a sculpture. I came up with this, people. It's it's terrible because I missed my son stuck his head in at a critical juncture, but I can go back and watch the video later and I'll get it right.
Yeah. If is this being recorded?
It is.
Okay, so people could go back and watch those directions again if they wanted to take their time a little bit more. So yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, Kevin's turn to fold something.
Oh, that's
Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
So I think is Kevin using the same rig here?
I'm here. Yeah. Well, we've got this wonderful setup. So
I like
with the transition to online teaching, in March, Ellen was teaching her book arts course, and she got pretty good at making videos. And so now we have this whole setup of we got a ring light and everything. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to teach the Miura Ori map fold. So here's an example. So this is a map from the map library, and you can see this is a big. I've got smaller ones too. So you can see it's a map, and then it folds up and collapses down very nicely. Now we're going to date ourselves a little bit here, Eric. You've probably actually held a map. Remember how maps fold and they're terrible and they're always a mess?
I actually have a couple dozen here in my office. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So they're folded poorly, whereas this fold is much better. It collapses down to a reasonable size. This is about a quarter of the size or an eighth even of the sheet of paper, and you can just grab it at the corners, unfold it, see where you need to go. I'm on the Missouri River apparently in this map, and then you can just collapse it back down, and it fits right in your pocket. There is a history of this design. It was actually invented by a Japanese physicist, so Miura, and he was trying to figure out ways to get large solar panels into orbit. So you've got a satellite or a space station and you need to supply it with power. And so you want to get, but you need big solar panels to supply it with power. And the question is, how do you get huge solar panels up into space on a rocket? Well, you want to be able to fold them down in a reasonably compact way and then deploy them up in space. So Miura actually figured out that this was a good way to do it. So I've got just an ordinary piece of paper. Here's the same paper Ellen was using. It's 8.5 by 11. You can use any size paper that you want. It doesn't have to be, it can be square, it can be rectangle, whatever. And so step one is let's make a hot dog fold. Let's put the long ends together. Get a good sharp crease on that. Okay, and now I'm going to take the top layer like this. So here's my fold up here. I'm going to open it up down here. I'm going to fold that up to this edge. So I'm folding it into quarters lengthwise. That's what's going on. But they're sort of alternating like this. Then I'm going to turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. Sorry.
While we repeat that action, I'm going to share a comment from YouTube, which is a shout out to Ellen. Ellen's book art class at UF was star, 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 star.
Ah, yay, thank you.
Ellen is very popular over in FAC. She is a rock star. Okay, so when you're done, you've got this. You've folded it in quarters. This step will seem weird, but go ahead and do it anyway. Just go ahead and reverse all those folds. What we want to do is we kind of want to break the paper. You know, paper has a very strong grain, as Ellen's students will tell you. And it's nice to just kind of break that on these particular folds. So, and then just leave it like it is. Now, if you've got, you know, if you had a piece of paper where you were really trying to have one side on the interior, you'd want to get it so that this would be like the map side up like this. Okay, so here we are. I've got it folded in quarters and I've reversed both of those. Now, here comes the tricky part. So, well, a tricky part. So I've got this zigzag like this. What I want to do is I want to mark a quarter of the way up on here. So one way to do that is bring this up like this, just make a little pinch, don't make a serious fold there, and then bring it up again to the halfway point. So now you see I've got this little pinch right here. I don't know how well that's showing up, but I've pinched off a quarter, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the whole thing. I've got all 4 layers here, and I'm going to bring it to this corner, to this quarter mark. And you can go back as far as you want. I mean, I'm going to aim for a couple of inches here, or 1.5 inches or so. This is 8.5 by 11 paper, and we sort of want to end up with something that's roughly square when we're done. So that's what I've done. Crease this hard. I mean, you really want to, if you have a bone folder, if you know what that is, that's, I don't think we have one handy. Oh, Ellen does have one. So it's a tool that looks like this. It's really good for really making sharp creases on stuff. It's useful, but you don't have to have that. So I've made this first fold. So this corner came to this quarter point. All right, now the next fold is we're going to turn it over. So it looks like this. And I'm going to fold back this way. Now, you don't just, this is sort of a weird thing. You might think that you make this edge line up with this fold you're making. That's not what you do. But you want this corner to land on where that fold's going to be. And then you want this bottom edge here of this piece to be parallel to the bottom edge of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you make that crease. Now from here on out, it's all parallel folds, but that first one is a little weird. Okay, so it looks a little wonky. This thing doesn't line up with that, but that's okay. This edge should be parallel to this edge. So he's got this little backwards Z here. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to flip it over and make another fold. Now you really can just do parallel because you'll get a nice zigzag. So you can just fold this edge onto that like that. And you'll see this edge is going to be parallel to that edge.
So it's that left edge is lined up.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you just keep doing that. So you flip it over, do it again. This edge, just line it up there. It took me the longest time to figure out that the first fold is different from all the rest. You can see this edge right here is not parallel to those, but all of these are. So you just do this until you can't do it anymore. So the last fold, you know, it might be pretty short, might have a little short piece. Okay. Okay, so when you're done folding it, you end up with something like this. So let me bring it up. So you see you've got these sort of zigzags that are all parallel. This was the top that I started with. So when you unfold it, you get these, you see these parallel lines, you get these parallelograms like this. Okay. So now let's remember where we're trying to go. I left my small, here's a small one. So, so here's a small one, a small version of this. We're trying to get to something like this. Okay, so where it folds down like this, and you can grab the corners like this. So what you see here is you have sort of these alternating, there's lots of things that are going on. You have these sort of parallelograms that sort of alternate in their directions. You also notice what I've got here is I've got this line of folds is up, then I have a valley of folds, then I have another mountain, and then another valley, and then another mountain. So this is what we have to make happen. So you take your paper, and now you're going to unfold it. And what you're going to notice is you've got these parallelograms. We have to invert some of the folds. So remember, we want this first row of folds up here to be a mountain. So I just sort of pop it back like that a little bit, and I make all of these folds along here into mountain folds. And the paper is going to resist you a little bit because you're sort of curving it. You're going against what it wanted to do. But see, now I've got mountains, and now I want this next line to be a valley. So I just sort of pop it. And the way I do this is I actually turn it over because it's kind of easier for me to make mountains than it is valleys. And I invert. You only have to invert half of them, of course. 2 of them are already in the right direction. But then you get there. Okay. Now you've got this, and often what I'll do is you can probably make this happen. You can collapse these 2 down all at once. Well, that's not working very well. Okay, let's skip that part. So I've got a mountain and a valley. Now this next one should be a mountain. So let's do that. Let's make all these folds mountain folds.
Okay, I expect to see some social media posts from everyone who's here at Museum Mates.
Okay.
Sharing their
And now
versions.
the next one should be a valley. So I'm going to turn it over. Just you can see, I mean, like this fold and this fold are already in the proper direction, but you want to crease them real sharp. These 2 aren't. You just reverse those. And if you're finding this challenging at home, I mean, believe me, I couldn't do it and couldn't do it and couldn't do it and couldn't do it for the longest time. So don't give up. It takes a little practice. This last one should be a mountain. And then once you've inverted all those folds, it'll just collapse down on itself. And now you've got this wonderful map that just fits right in your pocket. It unfolds easily. It's obvious that it should go back a certain way. You're not having to figure out how the map gets folded back. And you can see how much smaller it is than your original piece of paper. So here's an original piece of paper. There it is. You know, it's about 1/8 the size. It's really pretty remarkable fold. And that is the Miura map fold. Now I've heard, I don't know if this is true since I've never been to Japan, but I have heard that if you buy maps in Japan, this is how they're folded. People can refute that because I have no idea if it's actually true. I've heard it, but that is true.
That is cool.
It is very
And
cool.
I got this. How'd I do?
I don't know, I
Actually,
can't tell.
mine worked out okay.
Did it? Yeah, this is good. This is a fun map. All right.
We got a lovely comment from Ida, thanking Kevin and Ellen for magic during this time of self-isolation.
Mm.
And Andrew shared this live stream with the caption, "Fun failing at folding." Cool.
All right.
Failing is great too.
Sure. Well, that's the whole thing. You have to experiment with this stuff and figure out what works and what doesn't. And yeah, I wouldn't give up on this one, because it's very cool once it's done. And believe me, I have several busted attempts. I only really got good at this really within the last month. So success.
Very cool.
All right. Well, I
Well,
think that's it for us, Eric.
this has
unless,
been really a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Kellen. Kellen.
yeah,
Helen and
Kellen.
Kevin.
Kellen, that's us. It's it's like Brangelina. We're Kellen.
So this is really fun, and anyone who wants to go back and try again, if you had a fail and you're going to iterate until you get it right, you're welcome to rewind the video. It'll be up in perpetuity, and you can check out the link to the Euclid's geometries online that we shared in our comments, and there's a lot to explore still. So we've got, let's see, we are at 6:53. That's great. We're gonna say goodbye to Kevin and Ellen. Wish you well. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
And
Bye.
I'm going to take back control here if I can.
That's
Bye-bye.
you, control freak. Bye.
Bye.
Let's see, withdraw. Alrighty. They're still sharing their screen. What are we gonna do about that? Okay. Hey, Kevin. Cool. Okay, so 6:54. That's great. We are right on time. Looking forward to our next 7 o'clock hour. For those of you who joined us late, I'm going to just let some slides scroll in the background about some of the other stuff's going on at the museum. And at 7 o'clock, we'll turn it over to Molly, Mimi. So you should be able to see right now in the background some slides of other things that are going on online at the museum. Today's Monday, May 18th, is International Museum Day, in which museums around the world are celebrating sharing their collections, sharing their knowledge, sharing their research with their audiences. So we invite you to get online and look up International Museum Day. You'll find a lot of activities throughout the week and focusing on Monday at all kinds of museums, not just art museums. We, of course, are an art museum. We're delighted to share creativity, art, and artists with you tonight. In just a moment, we're going to share 4 artists talking to you about how they're working, especially during this time of challenging working at home, what inspires them, how they keep their creative energies up. So that's going to be a lot of fun. If you're looking for creative motivation and stimulus, we invite you to visit our Family Day on, oopsie, I'll come back in a moment. I lost the date. We invite you to visit Art at Home, Harn at Home, on our website. So our website is harn.ufl.edu, and Harn at Home, you'll find right on the front page, is a series of activities for, some of them are for kids, a lot of them are for adults and all ages, and a little, just like tonight, a chance to get inspired. At the same time, you might also check out our Watch and Listen page, where you might see a video featuring some artists or featuring some curators talking about exhibitions. There's a lot going on, and we invite you to explore that. I think now is a great time to check in with Mimi, see if she's ready to go. So Mimi, heads up, here we come. There she is. She's joining us right now. Hey, Mimi, welcome to Museum Nights. 4 artists. How you doing, Mimi?
Good. How are you?
Great. I'm going to make you a host. If I can find you. Sorry, a little Zoom challenged. Oops, I just admitted everybody. Sorry. That was the wrong button. Let's see. Mimi's now host. Hey. Hey, Brett. I don't think you were supposed to. I accidentally admitted everybody, so you're gonna all pop up, and then Mimi will manage it. Molly, good to see you. Welcome to Museum Nights. I'm so
Hi.
glad you guys are here. Oh, it looks like everyone else has popped in. There's Kristen and Iris. Mimi, can I help you get started? Or are you good to go?
We are good to go.
Okay, I am gonna fade into the background.
Bye, Erin.
Bye-bye, I'll be watching.
Yay.
All right. Thank you guys so much for signing on. And thank you for joining us for our first Conversations with Creatives as part of Virtual Museum Nights. I'm Mimi. I'm the Community and School Outreach Coordinator at the Harn Museum of Art. So we'll just get right into it. I'm just going to introduce everyone. So first, I'd like to introduce Iris Coe-Gross. Iris is a visual artist who rediscovered her connection to art making nearly 4 years ago while in treatment for stage 4 breast cancer. After her relapse 3 years ago, she became too tired to physically paint. So contour drawing has become a daily practice for her. Her work is a portal to expression, freedom, vision, and most importantly, healing. Iris has partnered with the Harn for several past museum nights. She has taught visitors about contour drawing and offered some really awesome live drawing, live contour portrait drawing that has been really fun. So we're really glad you're here, Iris. Next, I'd like to introduce Brett Taylor. Brett's interdisciplinary works explore the journey to personal acceptance while advocating for inclusive, accessible space. Brett received his Bachelor's of Art in Drawing from UF in 2019 and is currently pursuing his Master's in Fine Art in Printmaking at Ohio State University. Brett also served as the interactive gallery design intern at the Harn in the spring of 2018 and worked on programs such as Family Day and Community Day. So welcome, Brett. Next, we have Molly Kempson. Molly is a visual artist, printmaker, artist in residence at UF Health Shands Arts and Medicine, elementary art educator, and adjunct faculty at the College of the Arts at UF. Her artwork centers around the flora, fauna, and vernacular architecture of the American South. And Molly has collaborated with the Harn as a guest artist at Family Day and docent trainings. So I'm happy to have you, Molly. And last but not least, we have Kristen Lopez. Kristen is a community art educator, tattoo artist, and mom of 2 toddlers. Her nonprofit, Wayfaring Painter, brings artists, families, and local organizations together to experience contemporary and traditional art practices through workshops, parties, and playgroups. Kristen has also joined on past museum nights. In the May of 2018, she hosted a paper marbling program in our classroom space at the Harn. That was super fun. So thank you all for being here. And we can get started now. Each of you are going to kind of present individually, host a little demo, and talk about your work. So that there will be a variety of awesome things coming up. So let's start with Iris. So I'll hand it over to you, Iris.
Can I go ahead and get started? Okay. Hi, my name is Iris Coe-Gross. I'm a local Gainesville artist. I've gotten to work with the Harn for museum nights. This will be my 3rd time. And it's such a great opportunity to get to work with the community, kids and adults. Kids are usually the brave ones though. But it's such a great opportunity to be here tonight and get to connect with everybody. So tonight I'm going to demonstrate how I loosen up before I do any of my art practices. I try to do my contour practices daily. It's an exercise that keeps me grounded emotionally. It helps center me and focus. If I have something I need to put thought or infuse prayer into, I can always connect with my drawing. So tonight, if you want to join me, you're welcome to, but this is going to be a pandemic portrait of myself. I prefer to work with ink and in freehand right now. I was ill a while ago and I've not painted for a while, so the pen and paper is just such easy access to drawing without a loss of energy and without needing to spend a lot of money. So I really just like to use an ink marker or Indian ink. For this, we'll just use a Sharpie. I'm gonna do a freehand drawing using Mira's. I like to listen to music when I first start to exercise my hands and my brain, because it really kind of changes the flow of the drawing and the emotion you put into it. Again, I like to use Sharpie because I don't like to go back and erase and fuss with it. Again, I started doing the drawings when I was ill, so it was really intended just to get something done and to share a feeling, kind of understand what I was feeling. So tonight I'm going to play my favorite song so far of 2020, and I'm going to do a self-portrait. So I'm going to use a mirror. I'll show you the product at the end. And again, this is just one of my exercises that I do every day. The lines are going to be continuous. I don't like to lift my pen when I'm drawing because I lose the thought that I'm having or try to go back and correct myself. So while there are no rules to the art that I'm doing, I do try to keep my pen on the paper and I try to keep my eyes on the image that I'm drawing. So today the image will be me. All right.
Okay, I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored and I'm in the house bored and I'm bored and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house bored. I'm bored and I'm in the house bored and I'm bored and I'm in the house bored. I'm bored, 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 bored. I need me a thick chick sitting on the couch and I'm going through my Netflix. Working them, I ain't even doing. Tell her pull up, make it shake like Nesquik. Neck frozen with nowhere to go. Don't talk COD from the PS4. To the chill and refrigerator doors. We can heat up some ramen and go to the store. I ain't even going forward. I'm so bored, I'm losing my mind. Buying all these girls till I'm one at a time. I'm still hate till I catch me outside. I'm finito, finito. At home like Pico, Pico. She gon' suck it like mosquito, mosquito. I like she a Lido, Lido. Like married to the money, dressed in tuxedo. I control your mind like I'm Magneto. Got my bands on and they look like sneakers. They score like door on a hunt like Easter. Okay, I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored and I'm in the house bored and I'm bored and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house bored. I'm bored and I'm in the house bored and I'm bored and I'm in the house bored. I'm bored, bored, bored. Hey, I'm in the crib like an infant with some guy who playing burning incense. Bottle, tonic, gym mixed in, Snoop house shoes getting down to the kitchen. I'ma socialize at a distance. I'm living my best life, minding my business. And my anti-socials for the win-win. Lockdown, I'ma staying in. And ramen noodles every night from my den. Hulu binge watching episodes of Ben 10. And I got T-Raw for assistance. Bad boy, I'm at the ball like a piston. In quarantine, I'm the quarterback. MVP, I'm scoring that. In a pool here. Shout out DoorDash, for the napkins. I need more of that. Hey, can't find the remote, out of control, out of my mind, out of my hands, out of my soul. Under the coke, got my
locks locked, blinded and gold. I'm in a house and I'm so damn bored. I'm in a house like Corey, where you could find me like Dory. He keeping me on his story, signing them all like a Maury. My competition is boring. I'm bored in the house and I'm bored. Okay, I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house bored and I'm bored in the in the house bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house bored. I'm bored in the house bored and I'm bored in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored.
So that's kind of my startup that I would start with before I began my drawings or my paintings, or maybe just go into some more contour. So there you go.
Thank you, Iris. That was amazing. I tried to do myself.
No way! Oh, I love it, Mimi.
That was your face that you repeated, right?
Yes, I was just doing the continuous line contour.
So awesome. Thank you so much. And I also love that song.
I love that song. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So next, oh, and just a side note, we'll have time for Q&A after everyone presents. So if you have any questions for Iris, definitely leave them in the chat box. But we will now hear from Brett. So I'm going to share my screen real quick.
You good, Mimi?
Let's see.
Mimi's just pulling up the share, Brett. Saw that in a moment.
Thanks, Eric.
Oh.
Did you have it on and in full screen already or something, Mimi?
Yeah, but
I had a situation where I couldn't find something that was in full screen. So I had to go back and unfull screen it, and then I could find the share window for it.
I think it might like log me out for a second. Hold on.
Okay, we'll hang on and wait for you to come back in. I'll make sure that you are, I'm sure you can share your screen. I'll double check that. You're a host. She's gone. Well, now we can talk about Molly, about Mimi and how wonderful she is. I'm so glad you guys are all here tonight and you've given so much to the Harn. There's going to be some Q&A. Actually, I'll check and see if there's any questions so far. Iris, I just want to say how brave you are. If I'm going to draw, I'll sit in the dark and hide my paper. I won't let anyone see it. So I really love that you did that. And then Kristen, you shared yours too. So that's so lovely. You guys are just ready to share your art. Christopher says, hey, Brett, remember that time we looked at prints together? Chris Patton, Elizabeth's Chris.
For sure. I do recall.
Oh, here comes Mimi.
So.
Okay, Mimi's back with us. There you are. Let's make sure you are a host.
Sorry about that. I had some.
No worries. We're all learning as we go. Dave says puppy wants to play. I think we heard someone's dog barking in the background. And here goes Brett. We see your presentation. You're good to go.
Awesome. So unfortunately, I don't have a great playlist like Iris did, but I just figured I'd take some time to share some of the work that I've been working on. As Mimi said, I'm currently an MFA candidate in the printmaking area at Ohio State University, where I'm both a student and educator. Though at the moment, I'm currently in Minneapolis with a fellow printmaker, Sam Peck, where we're both working on educational videos for Chautauqua Visual Arts for a printmaking program or part of the residency program this summer. A little bit about my practice is an embodied transdisciplinary investigation into questions around how one constructs the self in response and in resistance to their surroundings, often questioning what it means to exist in a state of becoming, the emotional and physical response of failure or failures to the conditioned or continued production of the self, and then the codependent relationship between the constructed self and the constructed space. As you can see on the screen, I had Mimi share a few of the works that I've been working on. So one of the first ones, I find it kind of ironic that I was doing contact tracing before contact tracing was part of the conversation. So I used to map everywhere I walked as a method of kind of expressing the relationship between the self and the surroundings, how the way we walk starts to kind of chip away and define what environments we're moving through, but also how it kind of defines that daily routine. So it's a CNC'd line that's replicated that portion of the walk, and then an entire edition of print is bolted to it. So it's 12 sheets of paper, and then the original block. Also the kind of idea of how you can't replicate or retrace the steps exactly. If Mimi, you would change it to the next one. It's just kind of another iteration of the same thing. It was a mapped line from a particular day, but this time starting to experiment with 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional objects, to start kind of considering the physicality of the body as well in the process. So there's an ankle weight that I found at a thrift store along the walk, as well as the line, and then they're embroidered and attached together. And then lastly, another kind of take on the walking line. This print in particular is a screen print in gum arabic that was then printed using my feet. So it's an oil-based ink on gum arabic that's then exposed in water, so the line comes back. I think about that similar to the way we walk through space. We don't quite see the trace until later on, so it was the same way the mapping device would work on the phone, similar to that of the process. And then the piece of, or the support metal is from the walk. I actually found it on the way, and I just was kind of exploring the notions of the surroundings and the self as like a non-static element. So that's what I have put together to kind of open up the conversation.
Thank you, Brett. All right. Now we're going to hear from Molly. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Hi. All right, so I bought a house this year, which has been a dream for a really, really long time. And part of the reason I bought a house is that I wanted to build a print shop at my home and be able to start acquiring more type and more, sorry, I've got dogs at my house too. I wanted to be able to have a really, a home studio that really is built out the way I want it to be, that I'm not worried about having to move out of. I was at the Waldo Road Studios that are up kind of near Satchel's. And I was there for about 4 years with my press, but it was just time for me to be able to move home and be able to kind of really dig into a space. So the house that I bought had this carport. And this picture was taken right before the stay-at-home orders and stuff were taking place. But we started framing everything out. Windows were from like Repurpose Project. I really haven't made a whole lot of art. So a lot of this is just going to be about like what I've done to kind of support my practice. But a lot of it was learning new skills. So learning how to frame, learning how to hang windows, learning how to do insulation. If you want to go to the next one, Mimi. And then moving to press, which is not fun. It's not for the faint of heart. The first time I moved it, it gave me a heart attack. And so we moved it again. And that was just a huge weight off my shoulders. It's from 1917. It's a Chandler and Price letterpress. And it's how I make most of my art. So if any prints that I've got, like 8x10s or so that you might have gotten from me, they were made on this press. It's wonderful. It's a fantastic machine and I love it. And it's my workhorse. Now, of course, I have my own space and now I can start acquiring more stuff and more presses. So I'm on the hunt for some more, unfortunately. That's how printmaking goes. If you want to go to the next one. And so then this is the press in my space. So once it was finished out, we put beadboard. I got to stain some wood. I'm all situated, which feels really, really fantastic. So that's my press in its space. I hate to say that after about this point, which was, I don't know, maybe it was a few weeks ago. After I got to this point, I really haven't done much with my studio. I spent a lot of time clearing out my other space, painting, and then moving all the boxes in. And then I really ran out of energy. It was a whole lot of work. So if you want to go to the next one. This is one of the few blocks that I've been working on. A friend of mine gave me a tarot deck probably about a year or so ago, and I just started kind of messing around with it in quarantine and trying to kind of learn it just a little bit, mostly for the practice of learning new lenses for looking at life, basically. So I don't look at it as some kind of divination tool or anything like that. I use them as just ways to frame the problems that we're facing. And I spent too much of my time in my house kind of thinking and getting lost in my thoughts and reading and thinking about humanity. I know in the beginning I had all these like hopes of maybe this will be the thing that brings everybody together. Surely this couldn't be a time of divisiveness within our society. And then now we're in a place where people are even more divided than they were before. And so I've been working on these images that are loosely based off of the tarot, but they're kind of more about the South and identity, and most of my work is about the South and the complexity of our region and the complexity of our traditions and the variety of just different groups of people who have lived here for so long. I've spent a lot of my time reading. A lot of my time has been spent reading history and Reconstruction and trying to fill in these gaps of Southern history and trying to look deeply and trying to take some really hard looks at some really dark history and trying to find meaning out of it, out of this place that we live. If we want to go to the next one. And then I've also taken on a couple commissions. So this one really has nothing to do with my larger work, but it's my last completed lino cut that I did. This is right before printing it. So I've just practiced on keeping my skill set sharp, but also really working on kind of the groundwork. So creating a really lovely space for myself, creating a bigger base of knowledge from which to draw from for my art. And so that's what I've been up to.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly. Your space looks so perfect for that press.
It's getting there.
All right. So next we are going to hear from Kristen. And I'm going to share again.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Lopez, and like Mimi mentioned before, I am a mom of 2 toddlers. I'm an art educator and a tattoo artist. And, that's a little bit in order of amount of time that these things take up in my life. But one of my favorite things, I guess, just about my life in general is how all of those things kind of bleed together and how organically, not easily, but organically, I try to make them kind of build on each other. So my children are 2 and 4 years old. And hi, Angelo and Rosemary, if you're watching right now, hey. So I started out my teaching practice in museum education. I worked in an amazing children's art museum, Young at Art in South Florida. It's like the place of my dreams as a teacher. And I did that through my last couple of years of college. And then I got a job in public school, teaching in an elementary school in Broward County. So for 5 years, I taught in Broward County. I kind of was bouncing back and forth between different schools. It was another crazy time for education where there was all of these surpluses and budget shortages. And it was a weird time to be starting out as an educator. So I found tattooing, as another thing. I kind of had to rethink what my path was as a teacher, because it didn't seem like it was necessarily going to be really stable. So I got into multidisciplinary art from teaching. I started tattooing. Maybe you can go ahead and skip to the next slide, please. And then after moving here to Gainesville, I started at the art education grad program here at UF. My first week of classes, I also found out I was having a baby. So it was a really crazy year for me. And I found really a love for community art education. I kind of, after just the weird situation I had as a public school art teacher, I didn't know for sure if I wanted to go back to that type of a classroom environment. And in the art ed program, I kind of like developed, understanding of that. That's not the only way to be an art educator. Being in the classroom is not the only way that you can reach students and that you can be a part of your community. Mimi, you can go ahead to the next slide, please. So after the birth of my child, my first baby, Angelo, I really was feeling a lot of a disconnect and myself not having that accessibility to art anymore. I was really missing connection to my classmates. And it's been interesting kind of getting that feeling again now during quarantine, like this aloneness and this isolation of, not having my community around me. And that's what made me start Wayfaring Painter. It was because I wasn't finding any outlets for making work and for teaching that were accessible to me as a parent of a newborn. So that's where Wayfaring Painter started. I started doing my first classes at the library. Mimi, can you go ahead to the next slide, please? And we can go to the next one. Isn't this artwork cute? I just love it. These kids did a really nice job. I started doing classes in the library. They're free to the library patrons, and the library is able to fund this program for me. And it's been a really, really awesome relationship with the library. I've met so many interesting people, and programs at the library and programs in the community, and even the ones at the Harn and at Florida Museum of Natural History, like it's such an interesting cross section of Gainesville, because we see students, we see faculty, we see young families, just such a wide variety of people. And that's been one of the, most enriching things about being an educator in this way in Gainesville, is just getting really to meet the whole community where they're at and try to, make art accessible to them. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Another cool work that was made in one of my adult workshops. This was like the week or two before all of the lockdowns went into effect. So I really am holding on to these nice memories of this fun class that we did. Go ahead and go to the next one, please, Mimi. Thank you. So as an educator, I really developed this multidisciplinary approach to my work. My background was in art history, art education. So honestly, I did not, as an undergrad or even as the beginning of a grad student, really develop any type of studio practice. And it's made me feel all sorts of, imposter syndrome about even calling myself an artist. And tattooing really kind of connected those things for me and let me feel like, all right, I can call myself an artist now. I really didn't start to paint until I started to tattoo. I started creating Tattoo Flash sort of out of just, this is a necessity of being a part of the culture of tattooing, was making Tattoo Flash. So I started painting with watercolor, with acrylic, with gouache to make flash. And go ahead, next slide, please. And here's some examples of my tattoo work. And we can go to the next. Thank you. So I've also had to be away from tattooing during this time. So I don't get to teach my classes, I don't get to tattoo. So it's left me in this place, this kind of total identity crisis of like, I'm not even an artist anymore. How do I even be an artist? I mean, I could paint Tattoo Flash, I could paint with watercolor, but it just hasn't, I don't have a everyday practice of doing those things. So it's not felt really genuine to me. I've had like reservations about painting. And a lot of time, I think like everyone else, a lot of time to think. And this is the first time really since I was a teenager that I have had this much time with no obligations to just be at home by myself. And it's put me into this place of kind of thinking of what were the things that I did then? What did I do when I was a teenager? And I just was hanging around bored in my room and I didn't have a job and I couldn't necessarily see my friends all the time because it was a school night. And what I did was I made a zine. So this was the first issue of my zine. I started this when I was about 13 years old. And I think up until I was about 17, I worked on this. Go ahead, next slide, please. That's my sister Brenna also on that first one. And the zine really brought together a lot of things that were important to me at that time. I loved making collage. I loved writing. I was part of a punk scene. My boyfriend was in a band. A bunch of my friends were in bands. And it was a way for me to connect with my community and to be a part of it that I didn't feel like I was able to otherwise. You know, I was too young to go to a bunch of shows and, you know, just stuck in my house all the time. And this is how I engaged. Next. Next one, please. And I found this is like the front of my first page, and I found it really interesting that I made this little list of things Kristen likes and things Kristen dislikes. And, you know, that just was such a simple little thing of like, this is who I am. These are the things I like. These are the things I don't. And it's made me think about that. Like if I had a list like that today, what would that look like? So that's kind of been part of some of the things I've been thinking and drawing about. Next. Collage, love text. Next. This was the last issue that I did of this zine, and this actually went in my college application practice package. Next. So, drum roll please. Of course, what I've done during quarantine is make another zine. This zine I made it a little bit differently. You know, was working with my iPad now and kind of some different processes. Definitely a little bit of a different aesthetic, but this zine is going to be part of a show put on by Moisturizer Gallery. It's going to be a totally online exhibition about touch. The name of the show is Touch, and it's just talking about, you know, the whole subject of touch during quarantine, you know, not being able to touch other people or things like that. And in this zine, I talked about being overly touched, like touched out, and also like kind of out of touch of who I was, who I am. Next. So that's what I've been working on. And I really love, again, kind of getting to combine my different worlds here. All the way to the right, that's a little doodle that my son Angelo did. And I just grabbed it. I thought it was cool. And then later he saw that I had used it and explained to me that that's an elephant, like a dead elephant head or something. So I think zine and collage is a really great way to kind of combine thoughts and like visually journal for me. So that's what I have been up to.
Thank you, Kristen. I didn't know you taught in Broward. I'm from Broward, so
Yeah.
That's super cool. So I want to open it up to questions. I will check to see what questions there are from interviewers. This question is for Iris. Iris, do you ever draw with a rapidograph? Oops, sorry.
Rapidograph is
It's an ink pen. It's like a mechanical drawing pen.
I don't believe so, but I'm a mom also, so I draw with whatever's around. I do a lot of Sharpies. The ink quality is really good. That's what I did tonight.
Chris Patton wants to know, do you remember the time that you looked at prints together?
Yeah, I do. And hi, Elizabeth, and hi, Chris.
Okay, so I have a couple questions.
Of Sharp.
So I have some questions that are kind of tailored specifically to you, but I'm just gonna open it up and anyone can chime in at any time. So I'd like to ask you guys how can artists or creatives be kind to themselves during this time? I know a lot of you kind of touched on ways that you're cultivating practice at home. So if you have any advice or thoughts on that, I open it up to everyone. Molly. Oh, I'm unmuting.
You are more than your productivity. I feel like there's been a lot of pressure to make art, and it comes from just everyone, like normal conversations with friends and family. They're like, oh my gosh, I bet you're having a great time. I bet you're so productive. No, I'm not. I mean, I'm productive. It just doesn't look like what people expect it to look like. And so making the space to really take care of myself in ways that I haven't been able to in other ways, and realizing that like a lot of art is research and learning, and that's okay. It's okay if I don't come out of this with a ton of new art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think there's something to be said about boredom, like boredom breeds creativity, and it's okay. And that's a thing that I am trying to, my mom did a great job at modeling that for us, that it was like, well, if you're bored, find something to do, and I grew up in a home where it was not like wall-to-wall activities and we had to go from place to place to place. We actually did a full week in the first week of summer where we did nothing. And it was like my mom's chance as a parent to reset. And she said, I'm not taking you like anywhere that's not necessary. We are going to stay home. Like we'll go to the library and that's it. And, we've talked a lot about that. My sisters and I about, those feelings of this is kind of nostalgic in a way. And we're having to like dip back into that, that memory of, how do you entertain yourself and what are ways to, be productive and find meaning when we're not like being filled with outside stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I have been harkening back to being a kid often.
Yeah.
I have another question that Brett might want to answer. Have you collaborated with other artists during this time? How so? You kind of brought up the classes that you're preparing to make online.
Yeah, you totally just said that, and Sam's in the background going like this. So I'm actually in Minneapolis working with Sam on preparing lessons, so more along the technical lessons for Chautauqua Visual Arts. So it's anything from dry point to relief for all levels. I'd say like anyone from like 15 on, because there's sharp tools involved, but definitely like just if it's printmaking is something that you're interested in, I think it's a way to like really have this opportunity where access is a lot broader than it probably would have been. So Chautauqua is just like a small institution up in New York in upstate. And normally the classes are only offered for people who are there. But this is an opportunity where they'll be virtual. So I also like to think about how, though some people have differences in like how you get Wi-Fi and different things like that, just a larger audience in this moment right now that teaching reaches. And that lessons can reach, like this idea of like producing something online that can be seen all across the world, even in different time zones, I think is a really productive thing and actually expands this kind of sharing of ideas.
Definitely. There's so much out there now that I've been seeing all sorts of different kinds of resources that people are finding. Awesome. Next question. Kristen, I know you might have some thoughts on this, and maybe Iris too. I know you have some kids of your own. So my question is, do you have any tips for making art with kids at home?
Yes, definitely. I think the same way we just explained of, process over product for us as grownups in this time is doubly important for children. all the time when they're making art, but particularly in times of stress, already their education is being interrupted and challenged in different ways. So I think that, emphasizing process and accessibility. So it's not easy. Doing art at home with your children is not easy. I don't tend to regularly do a lot of art, like big messy things with my kids at home. That's why I have this classroom space, because it's messy, it's hard, it's a different environment. But I think one of the best things that I've done personally in the past few weeks is streamline all of my kids' art supplies and make them all easy to get to. And that seems like a no-brainer, but it really is so crucial. Like, to have a basket, and here are the crayons, and here are the coloring pages, and we keep those things like organized, and here's where paper is, and just making sure your kid can get to those things all the time. One of my goals as an educator is making art every day. And I don't necessarily mean like every single day, Monday through Sunday, that we're sitting down and doing artwork, but we should be able to when we want to. And it shouldn't feel like a big production where we have to, go to the store and make an Amazon order and do all of these things to make art. Like, what can you find? What can you find around you? What are you interested in? What can we, draw? What can we observe? What can we make? What things are we reading about? And being in tune with their interests. I think those are the best things about making art at home with your kids, is just do what they want to do and what you can do.
I think my kids got me started into art again, because when I started, a few years back, we were doing little postcard sized watercolor, Christmas cards. And I think drawing with children and not having big art education background kind of keeps the playful side of art there. The kids are just starting to get to the age where they're questioning their art and if it's good, or not loving every picture they do. And it breaks my heart, because that childlike enthusiasm for art is just such a beautiful thing, and they still have it. And when we do it together, it just is wonderful. And the public schools have their specials, their art classes online right now, so it's really nice to be involved with the kids' education, especially with the art that the art teachers come up with, because it's just so fun. It's art the whole family can do. You don't need a lot of supplies. You can find art anywhere. And with my art, I try to keep it as inviting to anybody as possible. And at the same time, I'm trying to teach my kids, and I also do a lot of nude drawings. So at first I kind of shied away from doing it in front of the kids, but there's no way now, and they see this all the time. So it's just kind of incorporated together, and they're okay with it, and I'm okay with it. So it's been an interesting time of creativity for everybody.
So we have a few questions from YouTube book. So this question is for everyone. Do you feel more or less inspired during this time to make art?
Wow. I would say that I am more inspired to make art for myself than I was before. And I'm more inspired to make things that are personally, and kind of recoup some time that I've lost from just being like a worker artist, and really develop like a personal practice right now. So I feel definitely inspired to do that, and to not make art that has a lot of pressure around it, for a particular purpose. But I don't really feel inspired to do work projects right now. So
Molly, I know you had, Brett, did you?
I think for me, it definitely has just changed my perspective on the kind of framework of what I was making in. For me, it was a very individual project, like looking how I walk through space through kind of lens of queerness and ability and different things like that. But in this time, it's given me a much larger perspective on kind of spatial constructs right now and how we're all navigating space differently. So it's really broadened the way that I see my work in comparison to the past. So.
Really interesting thought. Are you thinking specifically more about, I'm just curious, like people's homes or public spaces or?
Starting to look at both because we've been like frequenting or in this kind of shelter in place moment. I've looked at how like the comparison of the navigation. So how we kind of move around the domestic space versus the external, more the environmental space, and how those things kind of shift and compare. So I think for me, though it hasn't been like a huge time for making, it's been a large shift in thinking. And I think there's a lot of work in that.
Sorry, Molly, you're muted.
I'd echo what Brett's saying, where I feel like my thinking is deeper, my productivity and output is definitely really, really slowed. And I know that for me, it's because part of what I do every day and my different roles is I work with people. I work with people all the time in the hospital, in my classroom, and both my classrooms. And to not have that energy of having people making and watching people have these kind of aha moments over and over again, it really had me down for a really long time. I didn't do anything. I'm just starting to get back into making stuff again. But again, these deep dives and bigger looks and stuff are so important.
Definitely. Yeah, with museum education too, it's, you know, doing these big public programs, and so our whole kind of way of working has completely shifted. But it's so nice that we can connect like this. And we have a few more questions from viewers. This is also to everyone, big question. How do you find and cultivate your particular style? It's a big one.
Wow.
I
think I can really only speak to what I'm doing right now, I think, most clearly. And it's looking back, looking through memories, looking through other, older ways of doing things, older ways of even like teaching, and, having journals and having sketchbooks as an artist is really invaluable for that reason. It's not just about like practicing your work, but it's making a record of your work and getting to go back and revisit things that have been important. I think that's one way that my personal practice is informed. And I think for my educational practice, it really is about my kids, the kids that I know. Living with children has really changed the way that I practice as an educator, definitely. And just like, listening to people's needs and other people's interests, talking to other artists. I think that's what we do. We listen to people and we synthesize information and, create with it.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you have heard of a podcast called Creative Pep Talk. I've been listening to it a lot lately, and the host, his name is Andy J. Pizza. I don't think that's his real name, but he talks a lot about cultivating your style and looking back to what you were interested in as a kid, like what moved you as a kid, like movies or music or anything, and digging into that. So that's totally what we're talking about here.
All of the lessons that I've learned have been from what I learned from childhood and those elementary art classes and middle school and high school. I think it's invaluable what I kept and what I learned from those classes, because art for me is all, you know, it's for me. You know, if other people like it, I love it. But I've been kind of since this has been going on, I felt like my whole limbs just went numb, and it was like impossible to do art or just have my mind focused there. And then like a month ago, you know, I don't know, the cloud kind of lifted and felt that need to work again. And work is just, you know, practicing art every day and making it fit in with my family and with life. But yeah, the pandemic, and with my art, I feel what I'm doing now, it's kind of been not wanting to share it as much because it seems like I think Molly was saying, I thought everybody would come together and the world would, you know, be a very, I don't know, together in this, and like my art, when I see it, that's not how I feel it's happening now. So it doesn't feel like very hopeful art, and I hope that'll change soon.
Kind of going off of that, a question from YouTube. How has this experience impacted ways that you think about sharing your work moving forward? Digital versus installation based, you know, we're all moving towards so much more digital interaction. How do you see that impacting how you share your work?
I don't know. I have a pretty big digital audience, and that's kind of how I've shared my work over the years, is through Instagram largely. But what's interesting to me is that I've really pulled back from social media almost completely. Like I'm kind of in like a total hermitude. Like this is the first time I've put on makeup in a really long time. You know, like I've just kind of, even that web presence, that digital presence, I've pulled back as part of this practice of kind of really doing a deep dive and looking at what I'm doing. But I know I'll jump back into it, but I'm so much more interested now in on the ground exhibitions in the future because I'm so thirsty for it. And I'm thirsty to have those experiences myself of just going to a gallery and I miss the Harn and I drive by it and it, you know, I just want to see art in person, and it makes me realize that I can't just exist in Instagram forever, you know? So that's been my experience.
Yeah, I agree, Molly. And I think that I've done the same thing. Like, I just don't, not only is my phone like also a source of anxiety, you know, as all of these like updates and crazy things that we come across in the news and people's interactions with each other. But it's made me feel a lot more connected to the people I know in real life and in my community. Like this has given me a chance to connect with my neighbors that I haven't even talked to before, you know, like waving and talking to each other like across the street. And it has made me think about, you know, being more in touch with like the present physical world. And, you know, I think as educators, like all of us, you know, we get a little bit more of that than sometimes, you know, the average person, because we're, you know, working for our communities. But it's definitely made me think about, you know, pulling away from the way that we do things online, and how can I be more present for people, you know, physically.
I think as far as like shows are concerned, for me, I think it presents an interesting solution. There's almost a hybridity to this now, where it's like that shows will no longer be super nuclear. Like it's not if you were there, you've seen it. Like there's options now where it can be both virtual and in space. And I think it will be way more inclusive in this way. It kind of gets rid of that kind of nuclear white box and is much more expansive. So I'm excited to see how we kind of push forward and in the sharing of ideas and artwork in the future.
So there's a few more questions I want to get to before we finish up here. Again, this is to everyone. from YouTube. Has potentially not having access to your usual mediums or tools during this time presented any new discoveries of expression for any of you?
One of the things I've been staying busy with, I would say my current daily personal practice has been sewing. I've been involved with some community groups that have been sewing masks, and it has been surreal to try to purchase materials for sewing and not find them. It's been very strange. I walked into Walmart and there's like, it looks like, hurricane preparedness happened in the sewing aisle. There's just nothing on the shelves. There's no thread. There's no, interfacing. There's no elastic. And it's really strange. It's even things that don't have to do directly with mask making. I feel like there's just been such an uptick in people wanting, these things to do at home. It's interesting to have something that we do all of the time suddenly be, in demand. And it's made me value those things more. I think definitely to really, as we were talking about, physicality and material things, like just to treat those things with care and love even more than I normally would. And one thing I'm really missing right now is the Repurpose project. Oh my gosh, for Gainesville people, like I am just dying thinking about all of the cool fabric that I could be making stuff with right now that's in Repurpose project and going to thrift stores and sourcing materials. So a lot of those places are in my heart right now.
I definitely agree. I think for me, it was thinking about different ways you can mobilize your practice. Like for me, I found my sketchbook to be my studio practice as of late. It just kind of comes everywhere with me, and it's literally right here with me all the time. Like I write down things, I draw sketches, and I just think it's like we have all this knowledge, and it's just a great way of like either sharing it or documenting it for ourselves. And so it was just like something that's always been there, but now realizing that that's quite an essential part of my practice.
I also feel like we've been doing Hearn at Home, these art activities that are based around exhibitions or works in the collection. And I've noticed for some of the ones that I've created, I'm trying to use whatever I can find around the house, assuming I have no art materials. And, I've been pulling cans of beans to trace and all these different things that I would have never done before this, really. So it's been really interesting and has kind of changed my perspective on what you can use, what is a tool. So I'm gonna do one last audience question, which was also one of my questions. Thank you, John Church. Is there anything that you all are excited about or have recently enjoyed that you'd like to share with us? Do you have any upcoming projects? Anything that people can check out who are interested in seeing more? Iris?
I'm real excited. When I was ill, the second time is when I started doing the contour portraits, and I started doing breast cancer survivors or people who were in treatment. It was when I was in treatment, so it was real helpful to have that to focus on. And so that show is gonna be at the Artisans Guild in October. So I'm real excited about that.
Awesome.
That's great. Yeah, I mentioned earlier a little bit that I'm going to be participating in an online exhibition at Moisturizer Gallery. It's the first time I've shown any type of work. It's definitely the first time I've digitized a zine. It's interesting. And I'm excited about that process. I'm excited about, like Brett mentioned, the increasing that accessibility. not only have I not been shown my work publicly, I've not been to a gallery show pretty much since my kids were born, because it's hard. I'm not going to go to something that starts at 7 o'clock on a weeknight. So I really am excited about that accessibility and kind of being a part of that going forward.
And I've been working on the Aim to Connect videos that Arts and Medicine has been doing for our hospital patients. And we have like iPads in the rooms at Shands that patients can click on and see videos of different art activities, or they can request like a live music visit and like have a musician on the other end doing requests. And we've been like recording videos and stuff so that these patients can do activities without us being there. We can also Zoom them, but the logistics in the hospital have been really challenging. But we can also have these videos as a resource for when patients are back at home, so they have, you know, continuity of care. They might have learned how to make art in the hospital. A lot of our patients have never made art before. And then when they go home, they're able to pull up those resources again. And those are on the public, open to the public, just as Aim to Connect on the Arts and Medicine website.
Awesome.
For me, it's just looking forward to teaching those classes for Chautauqua this summer. They run anywhere from the end of June to the beginning of August, so checking those out. And then also, like, this week we're all getting together because I am in my second year of my MFA, so we're looking to figure out what format our second year show is going to be in. So checking things out there.
Well, I think that's about all the time that we have. Thank you so much to each of you for coming on tonight and talking together. This has been really nice. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. We really appreciate you guys, everyone involved. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all so much. What a great evening to spend together. Really inspiring. You're so generous. And I just want to say a bunch of thank yous, obviously to Mimi, yay. And then to Molly Kempson, Brett Taylor, Iris Cook-Gross, and Kristen Lopez. Go back and check out the YouTube live recording. You can see lots of questions, lots of enthusiasm. You inspired our guests tonight. I want to thank again Ellen Knutson and Kevin Knutson for our first hour. That was really great. I got some trash, if not an art project out of it, but I'm going to go back and try again, second time. I wanted to remind everybody that Monday is International Museum Day 2020. You can go to imd.icom.museum. Who knew there was a .museum? We knew .com, we knew .org, we knew .edu, we didn't know .museum. So that's IMD, International Museum Day, .icom, ICOM, which is International Committee of Museums, .museum. And just explore a museum on Monday, right? They're closed, but it's great. There's so much wonderful stuff out there. I really encourage you. And then museum nights, did you know that they're once a month, always on the second Thursday of the month? That's right. So June 11th is our next museum night. And it's going to be Alice in Wonderland. Nope, Alice in Museum Land. Sorry. We're celebrating our exhibition that's open, but we haven't gotten to share it yet. Works by Maggie Taylor, exploring the book Alice Through the Looking Glass. They're really beautiful and very inspiring. So we're plotting that. We look forward to seeing you all live. Start at Facebook, and we'll take you to our whatever platform we find ourselves on for that. And it's been so great to be with all of you. I really just lastly want to thank not just Mimi, but also everyone else who's helped make this night. Elizabeth King, Paige Willis, Heather Bjorn, Tammy Roth, Matt Herring. It's been a team effort to pull this off. So thank you. Mimi, any last words that or anything I dropped the ball on, didn't cover?
I think you got it.
Okay, everybody. Take care, have fun, be safe.
Thank you.
Be close at a distance.
You.
Thank you. Bye-bye.